A character is exploring a very creepy house in a horror video game called Stay Alive. He's seeing shadows moving in mirrors, a woman in red in a doll box that moves when he leaves. It's the Blood Countess who's suddenly showing up in the corridor, following the character. He's running away right now, but the door's closing on its own as creepy ghosts start to appear all over the place. The character runs upstairs and finds a room full of bodies, only for the Blood Countess to push him off the staircase, causing him to get killed by the chandelier chain. In real life, the player Loomis gets the game over screen, not noticing the creepy face appearing behind him. Then, on the weekend, he calls his best friend Hutch and invites him to play the game with him. After that, Loomis hears a noise upstairs, carefully approaches the door, only to find that his roommate is busy with a girl. Loomis is always teasing them about losing, because he saw their characters die in the game. He's having a nightmare about the game when he goes to sleep, and he wakes up to find that there's no power. He decides to go downstairs and is suddenly startled by a spook on the mirror. He also hears a noise nearby. Loomis is blaming his imagination for that, but he doesn't notice the shadow in the corner until he gets to the kitchen and takes a drink. Suddenly, he heard the sound again, and as soon as the shadow came closer, Loomis threw his glass at it to break a mirror before running upstairs in terror. He goes to his friend's room for help, only to receive a huge shock. Both the roommate and the girl were killed, just like in the video game. Suddenly, the strange shadow throws a chain around his neck before throwing him off the handrail, making him die like in the video game too. When Hutch gets a call that Loomis is dead, the next day at work, he's talking about video games with his boss, Miller. Sometime later, he goes to the funeral and meets Abigail, who is taking pictures of all the sad faces. Loomis's sister, who gives him Loomis's bag as a souvenir, suddenly approaches Hutch. After that, Hutch is going to the internet cafe run by his friend October and her brother Phineas, who play video games. They look into Loomis's bag and find some old pictures plus a lighter, which startles Hutch because he has fire-related trauma. They've also got a copy of Stay Alive that doesn't seem to be recognized by October, so Hutch explains Loomis was involved in the beta tests. Later at home, Hutch worries when he hears a noise by the door, but it turns out to be his friend Swink, who has come to play Stay Alive. Phineas and Abigail will also be arriving in early October, while Miller's playing on the internet from his office. When the game starts, it gets stuck on the image of a book, and the players must recite the prayer of Elizabeth on their microphones to continue. As they read the poem together, their words disappear, and no one notices the shadow behind them in the room. When they're creating their characters, the narrator will tell them about this story, and October thinks it sounds familiar. As the game starts, the joysticks vibrate to match the shaking in the game. A ghost immediately attacks them, and they easily kill it, which makes a rose appear. The narrator says that roses give them a chance of escaping ghosts they can't see. After a slow start, the characters move into graveyards and begin to kill ghosts all over town, which turns out to be very fun for their friends. At the end, the group enters the building, where they find a portrait of the Blood Countess, who is still alive as Elizabeth. Miller scans the basement, where the door has been shut and separated him from the rest of the players, while Hutch is noticing that every mirror in the game isn't working. He's found a room full of blood, bodies, and spirits, so he's thrown a rose to dispel them. Now he's out of roses, which allows the Blood Countess to jump on the character and kill him, giving Miller the game over screen. At this point, Miller sees someone moving around, but he thinks it's just a night guard. The group decides to call it a night, and Miller leaves his office only to hear the door open himself. Thinking it may be the guard, Miller jumps in screaming as a prank, but finds nobody and leaves. In the corridor, a shadow begins to appear, and Miller hears another strange sound echoing through the room as his door opens again. To find his vibrating joystick, Miller looked under his desk, only for a ghost to suddenly appear and kill him. Hutch came to work the next morning and found his colleagues crying, cops looking at a crime scene. Devastated by the news, he tries to enter Miller's office, but the cops keep him away. Detective Thibodeau is going to ask him a few questions, and Hutch is going to tell him about the game they played together. After the detective lets him go, Hutch glances at the office and sees the body on the desk. Sometime later, the friends find the body of Miller's character in the game, and Hutch notices it looks exactly the same as Miller's real death. Most of the group is too upset to play again, so Phineas decides he's going to play by himself. He finds a mirror in the play, which is instantly broken when he sees the carriage's reflection. But he turns it around, and the other side doesn't break, because it's made of silver, so he notices how the carriage approaches his character and stops the game to save him. Meanwhile, the group discusses what happened, and Hutch points out that Loomis and Miller both played Stay Alive right before they died, so it can't be a coincidence. Worried, the group rushes to check on Phineas and finds him bent over the desk, but he's just smoking. Phineas thinks this theory is stupid, and they overreact. The gang decides to return to their things until he shows off his mirror item. While Swink works on his computer, he suddenly sees blood coming out of his keyboard and CPU, accidentally touching it. At the same time, October's seeing a ghost in the mirror, Hutch is seeing his eyes change before the mirror breaks. But when they're blinking, all these things are going to disappear. Phineas is working on his car and hears horses nearby, so he leaves the road to avoid an approaching vehicle in time. Afterward, Hutch researches his friends' deaths in the office computer and notices how even the smallest details match the video game. The girl's body was drained of blood and Miller was killed by huge twin blades. He devotes himself to reading, and he doesn't see the spirit moving in the corridors. Hutch will be meeting with October, Swink, and Abigail the next day to discuss what he found. It turns out that October did some research, and she found out that the Blood Countess was based on Countess Elizabeth Bathory, a real-life crazy killer. The buildings in the game are from her actual house, including a torture chamber. She used to hunt for victims in a black carriage and tortured them with huge twin blades. She also hated mirrors because she didn't like seeing herself grow old. As punishment, she was locked up in her tower alive, and that day she swore she would be back for revenge. Phineas is going to meet the others in the meantime. Suddenly the sky darkens and a ghost appears in front of his car, causing him to lose control on the road. Phineas leaves his car and calls friends to remind him that he didn't die in the game, which should be all right. However, he starts hearing the horses again, and soon the carriage appears to run him over and kill him. When the friends find him, October has a breakdown over her brother, while the others check the game to discover Phineas's character has died the same way. The cops soon arrive too, and Hutch tells them his theory, but Thibodeau thinks it's ridiculous and suspects Hutch because he's connected to all the victims. While they're talking, Officer King decides to try out the game on a boy's computer, and his character is killed in some sort of ambush. The groups agree that no one should get hurt, so they have to figure out how to stop the game. At that moment, King went to a video game store and tried to locate Stay Alive, but the clerk didn't know about it. When he returns to his car, his mirror breaks as the ghost appears, and King is killed the same way his character did in the game. In the meantime, Hutch and Abigail are going to Loomis's house looking for clues, and Hutch knows why he doesn't like fire. When he was a boy, his jealous father thought his mom was cheating, and he set their house on fire. Unable to move, Hutch had to watch his mother burn alive. Once inside, they see the room still filled with blood and try to ignore it. Then they'll find Loomis's cell phone with the name and address of the company that made the game, so they'll call Swink and October and tell them they're going to visit the developer. October uses the chance to tell them she did research and that the only way to destroy the Countess is to drive 3 nails into her body, to trap her soul back in her old body, then her blood must be burned. At that moment, King's death appears on the news, and the cops surround the apartment, but October and Swink manage to get away through the fire escape just in time. Later, when the friends return to Loomis's house, they realize that the poem from the beginning of the game had summoned the ghost of the Countess. Suddenly, they're seeing that the game's running on the computer, even though no one's turned it on, and it's showing a ghost watching October's character through the window. When she suddenly sees a ghost in a neighboring house under construction, the real October is outside smoking. October came into the house while her friends were looking for her, and she found a creepy chain on the ground. The ghosts move in the shadows, so October grabs a nail gun and tries to shoot the Countess, but unfortunately she's struck by nails right through her. Terrified, she tries to run away, but the chain wraps around her ankle and drags her up to hang her upside down. Her cries attract the attention of her team, which is trying to get inside and finds all entrances closed. The Countess quickly kills October before disappearing, and the door opens for the trio to find their dead friend. Before the police can find them, the trio gets out of Abigail's car after a moment of mourning. They've concluded that the game has been played on its own, so Swink volunteers to continue playing in order to keep his characters alive. They find out that it's the original house of the Countess when they finally get to the company address. While Abigail and Hutch go to investigate, Swink's staying in the truck playing. No one will answer their knock, so the two of them go in and split up to watch. While Hutch sees the black carriage in the garage, Abigail finds a doll that looks exactly like the Countess, in a room that looks just like the game. At that point, Swink realized that the house in the game had the same layout, so he called Hutch for directions. Eventually, he finds the cemetery and the tower from the game. At the same time, Abigail opens the wardrobe to find the same passage she discovered while playing. She's found all sorts of creepy stuff here, like broken dolls, creepy crawlers, notes on torture and dark rituals, a portrait of the Countess with her twin swords. There's also a diary with the names of all the girls the Countess killed to stay young. Suddenly, the power goes out, and the bugs fall on Abigail's face before a ghost appears, making her scream. Hutch hears her and wants to help, so Swink leads him back to the locked door, and when he drops the crowbar in the game, he makes it appear to be real, and Hutch uses it to break the lock. Then he's running into the room and finds it locked, but Swink opens it with the key to the game. As Abigail is grabbed by the ghost's hands and the Countess gets her blades ready, Swink's character gets there first, so he throws roses to make all the spirits disappear. Hutch is coming soon, and with a kiss, he comforts an anxious Abigail. Afterward, the van starts vibrating with the joystick, and the doors suddenly close, so Swink can't access the computer anymore. The cart in the game is trying to kill this character, but Swink breaks a window and gets him out quickly. Swink's back in the car, but even though his character's still alive, the Countess shows up. Terrified, Swink starts running away toward the roses and gets stuck in a bush, giving the carriage the chance to catch up to him. The Countess will be coming out soon, preparing her swords. Back to Hutch and Abigail, they return to the van to find the laptop screen marked Game Over, and Swink's character dead in a bush. Determined to accomplish their task, they're gathering some nails and roses before the carriage arrives at the cemetery in search of them. Hutch pushes Abigail into a mausoleum to protect her. Then he lets the carriage reach him to use a rose and make it disappear, which destroys the flower. After that, the two of them find a secret passage in the mausoleum and begin to walk across it toward the tower. Soon the Countess tries to attack them, but Abigail quickly throws a rose at her to make her disappear. Then the ghosts of the girls the Countess killed start filling up the corridor, so the duo runs away and drops more roses before hiding in the Countess's torture chamber. Hutch locates the stairs and barely moves a few paces before the doors slam shut, leaving Abigail at his side. She's asking him to find the body of the Countess so that he can put an end to it while she's protected by their last rose. Hutch reaches the top of the tower by climbing the stairs and finds Countess Elizabeth's body completely preserved. While he starts hammering the 3 nails, Abigail plays He Loves Me Not with the rose, and the room suddenly gets dark before she appears hanging from the ceiling. As the Countess appears to taste her blood, Hutch hammers down the last nail, so the spirit leaves Abigail and re-enters the old body. A few things shake and fall from the tower, including an oil lamp that breaks. The Countess leaves the bed at that moment, and Hutch hears nails falling to the floor as she's expelling them. Remembering Phineas's mirror, Hutch uses his silver laptop to make the Countess see her own reflection, which causes her unbearable pain. He is forced to give up his fear of fire and light the lamp with oil. As the flames reach the Countess to finish the ritual, Hutch tries to leave, but the door is sealed. He remembers his childhood, thinking he was going to be like his mother, but fortunately Swink showed up and kicked the door in. To keep the Countess at bay, he and Abigail brought more roses to rescue Hutch before they fled. The Countess's body is burning, and smoke can be seen in the distance as the three of them walk out of the tower. Sometime later, the video game stores will receive the official release of the game, Stay Alive. Magazines are writing about it, and the clerk decides to play it on the store's console. The Countess can be seen from the tower's window as new players recite the summoning poem. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you like it.